Well, hello there and good evening. Meteorologist Jim Dickey here in the ABC7 Weather Center, tracking what's going to be a pretty crazy couple days of weather here in Southwest Florida. We're going to go from basically summer-like weather tonight and through much of tomorrow to some of the heaviest rain we've seen in about a month here to some of the coldest weather we've seen since last winter, all in a span of about 48 hours. And it's all thanks to what you're seeing out there right now. Let me actually put a lapse on this for the past couple hours, and you can see how this rain is progressing. 6 hours, there we go, and let's put it forward. This is a frontal boundary, a cold front, and it's stretching, tough to see where it's stretching, all the way from the Carolinas back on into Texas, and it's a slow mover. It's going to take its time getting into Florida, but this is going to make it here as we go into the weekend. So you see the heavy rain associated with it, and actually, if I were to put on precipitation type, check this out. A little bit of snow back into Texas. Yeah, parts of Texas are going to see some snowfall from this. Parts of the Deep South going to see some snowfall from this. It's speaking to the fact that we have a very cold Arctic air mass moving its way across the middle of the country, diving to the south and east, and that is going to push all the way through Florida as we go into the weekend. We're not going to see quite what they're seeing in Texas with it being cold enough to snow, but temperatures in the 20s. In northern Florida, not the question. For us here in Southwest Florida, I think we see some 30s. Also, anytime you see this going on across the Great Lakes, a good sign that there's an Arctic air mass moving across. That's all lake effect snow. And those bands out there, and really some impressive mountain snow going on in Pennsylvania too. When you see bands like that, you're seeing an Arctic air mass, very, very cold, move over the relatively warmer Great Lakes that are still unfrozen at this time of year, and that produces these little mesoscale bands of snow that can drop really impressive snowfall amounts. But of course, again, nothing like that here in Southwest Florida. But we will see our fair share of cold weather, especially for us. So let's time out that front. Here we go. So as we go through the night, and notice sort of how this is marked on this right now. This is showing it stalled out. Really what happened here is we had one boundary move in and sort of fizzle out, and now we have a second front coming in. But this is how the people that make our graphics, Barron, are choosing to show this, and it's not a huge difference, so we'll go with it. But basically, there is a new wave forming along that front, a new area of low pressure, and this is by tomorrow evening. I think most of our Friday is dry, certainly up until sunset. I think once we get past 6 o'clock, we'll take a close look at this in a second, that's when the rain starts to get going. But eventually this front does move in here, and when it does, we're going to see some rain, perhaps some thunderstorms, perhaps some strong thunderstorms. It's from about 8 o'clock at night until about 8 a.m. in the morning on Saturday. That's your best chance to see that heavier rain. And I think for the most part, the worst of it happens before the sun rises. We could see that rain linger into the morning hours, into the daylight hours on Saturday, though. But for the most part, Saturday, we're drying things out. See where the front is by 9:30. It's really all the way out of Southwest Florida, and I think this model is holding on to the rain far too long. We're going to dry things out quickly. By the time we get to the afternoon, the sun breaks through, the front's gone, then the winds pick up, and the chilly air starts to make its way into the area. It's the hour-by-hour forecast showing you the timing on this rain. So here we are tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, just a couple showers out there. Nothing really to write home about for the morning hours on our Friday. We go into the afternoon and evening. Here we are by 8:30, and here's the model already picking up on the first wave of rain with the front. Again, 8:30 p.m. in the evening, there's your storm starting to press their way towards Charlotte County. They spread across the region. This is by 3 in the morning, and the model is showing looks to be a squall line setting up right across Lee County, up on into central Florida, and then that presses its way through just by 8:30. And again, I think that last model holding on to the heavy rain too long. This now shows that squall all the way out towards the East Coast, and pretty much everybody by 8:30 in the morning, dry. We get to 10, 11, 12 o'clock, we're done with the rain. By 7 o'clock, we now have northerly winds, we have strong winds, and we have chilly air rushing in to Southwest Florida. Now, of note, when this makes its way in here, there is a threat that a few of these storms could be on the stronger side. In fact, the Storm Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma, putting much of Southwest Florida, including really the Caloosahatchee northward, but Lee County on northward, in marginal risk for severe weather, which is sort of the second category you go into, perhaps the first category where you can see the potential of some strong storms. And as we look at the threat tracker, the main threat here is going to be for localized heavy rainfall, but it's not going to be enough or lasting long enough to produce anything in the way of flooding. Perhaps some minor street flooding, some ponding on the roadways, but I don't expect any significant flooding from this. Damaging winds is, I think, the biggest severe threat. If we're going to get warnings, they're likely going to be severe thunderstorm warnings because the winds aloft, as this front is coming in, they're quite strong. So as thunderstorms come through, you have winds up above the surface, a couple hundred feet up, 1,000 feet up, at about 60, 70 miles per hour. You can mix those winds down, and you can get those wind gusts in that neighborhood. So damaging winds is the primary concern, but really any time I see this type of setup with a upper level disturbance moving through, with a strong cold front moving through, not out of the question we could get a few of these storms to start to turn, to spin, and we could get a spin-up tornado, something we'll be watching for. It's not a widespread tornado threat, but it's something we're going to be keeping an eye on as we go through the overnight. But it's not a huge threat for severe weather. But yeah, there could be a few stronger storms. Again, the biggest concern is for heavy rain, and this is what we're talking about, rainfall total-wise. A general 1 to 2 inches, I think, in that neighborhood. That's what we see. Perhaps lesser amounts if this moves a bit quicker than we're thinking, but this would be good news. We need the rain this time of year. We're in dry season, so really our rain comes in these boom or bust sort of events. So we're rooting for that. We're definitely rooting for the heavier rain to help beef up those rainfall totals for the month. But again, it's a cold front. So behind this, we're going to see a pretty significant change in our temperatures, and what's going on across the really across the entire country, pretty remarkable. So I'm showing you the temperatures in the middle levels of the atmosphere, and you can sort of trace it out. There's, over the west coast, you see that sort of green showing up. There's sort of a ridge. Think of waves. There's a crest of a wave, a ridge going up over the west, and then the wave dives down into a trough all the way down to Texas, where they're seeing the snow here tonight, and then across the east. Where that trough is, that's where the Arctic air is diving in out of Canada, that deep purple and pink shade. That is some brutally cold air. We're, of course, just going to be on the fringes of it. But as I advance this, you see the whole thing is just sort of pivoting and spinning. That chilly air starts to make its way into Florida as we go through Saturday into Sunday. Sunday morning, and I think in particular Monday morning, even though the core of the cold is starting to lift out, going to be some of the coldest mornings we've seen since last winter here in Southwest Florida. And just to look at some of what the models are saying, I want to show you 2 separate ways that we go about looking at model forecasts. So this is what's called MOS, which stands for Model Output Statistics. Basically, you take a look at the model, in this case the GFS model, the American model, and you look at what it's putting out, and then you compare that to, okay, anytime a model says this, statistically, what numbers come out? And it also weighs in average highs and lows and things like that. So this is a very good, this is something we rely very heavily on, especially here in Florida, when we make our temperature forecast. And I have circled what this is saying for the lows. Sunday morning, that's your first red circle, and Monday morning, 45 and 41. When you see MOS going down to 41, that's sort of, a flashing red light of it's going to get pretty chilly here. In fact, I don't think it's out of the question. Some of our inland areas, Arcadia, perhaps even Punta Gorda, Port Charlotte, we could see a few 30s on the board early Monday morning because the winds go light and that cold air is really in place. Warm things up a bit into Tuesday and Wednesday, and then we have another front that comes through and back to the 40s for Tuesday. This is a different view. This is just the raw model output from the European model, but it's also showing similarly cold weather. It's showing numbers down into the 40s. As you look at that bar on the top of the screen, sort of that second bar, those are showing minimum temperatures, and you see that there's 2 42s lined up. That's Monday morning. So MOS is saying 41. The European is saying 42. It's a good bet that we're going to be down into the lower 40s as we go into the morning hours. And Saturday, once the front comes through, the chilly air is rushing in. We'll be in the 60s in the morning, and temperatures are going to struggle to climb much at all. Sunday, we do get that nice rise in the afternoon, but it's only back to the 60s. So really sweater weather here the next couple days. Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We warm things up a bit in the middle of the week, but again, this is sort of a long-duration cool down. A reinforcing front comes in. We cool things right back down for Wednesday. We'll be keeping a very close eye on these models, trying to hone in on exactly what that temperature is going to be Monday morning if we do see some 30s on the board. And we'll be keeping a close eye on the severe weather threat too. So be sure to keep it with us throughout your Friday on ABC 7 as we continue to watch this front head our way. Until then, meteorologist Jim Dickey, have a great night.